Hey everybody, I'm sitting here with Heidi, Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and she is a flutist, she is a podcaster, she is a teacher, she's the host of the Flute 360 podcast, and she has some courses for musicians, I believe, as well as podcasters alike. So I'm very excited to get into this conversation. Heidi, how are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I know you've been podcasting for a while. So why don't we just start from the beginning? Where was Heidi before her podcast?
Oh my goodness. I didn't even know podcasting was a thing. And the next thing you know, I'm being thrown into it, which is a beautiful whirlwind, to say the least. My podcasting journey is actually very unique. Flute 360 came about because it was my DMA thesis. And so when you graduate with a master's degree or a doctoral degree, you need to graduate with some sort of thesis or dissertation. And mine happened to be the Flute 360 podcast. So when I talk to podcasters and I tell them that, their eyes kind of light up and go, what? That is totally different. And yeah, it is. But I'm so glad that it started off that way because I had to really polish it. I had to really think about who I was speaking to, my avatars, the content, the value that I wanted to bring before I hit publish. Sure. And so that's my story. I started off in March of 2018. And so we just celebrated our 3rd-year anniversary, starting year 4, and we have published over 160 episodes.
Wow. That's quite the accomplishment. When you were doing it for your dissertation, did you think like, hey, this is going to be a 3-year, ongoing thing, or is like, I'm going to do this for, the semester that I have to, or the year that I have to do this?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Literally, I approached it initially as a means to an end. I was like, get me the heck out of here. Because when you work on your doctorate, by the end of it, you're just like, someone kill me. I am so done. And I don't care if I put out, X project or Y project. I just want to be done.
Yeah.
But thankfully, my committee, who consisted of the who were the flute professors, the trumpet professors, and cello professors, really encouraged me to think long-term. And I'm so glad that they did. So the podcast definitely went through an evolution. It started off as a DMA thesis. And then later I kept it going post-graduation in that summer of 2018 as a hobby. I was learning a lot. I was meeting some great people. And better yet, I was making these wonderful connections with people and flutists across the country. And I literally thought, this is wonderful. There's something here. And then it evolved into basically being a piece that I could throw into my CV. So when you get a DMA in any kind of, X performance, your thing that you are striving to get at the end of that is an academia job. Well, between 2018 and 2020, there were no full-time tenure track academia jobs for flutists, none. So here I am building up my CV with my Flute 360 podcast, which I had great intentions, but it wasn't doing the trick.
Sure.
And finally, I did receive a full-time position outside of Shanghai, China, and it was to start in 2020.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, yay, these 2 years, I have worked my tail off. This is wonderful. It's paid off. Well, then COVID hit. Yeah. And I was like, oh, shucks. I was practically on the plane. And the Chinese consulate in Houston and the US Embassy in Shanghai got shut down, like within the same week. So there was no way I was getting over there. And so that was July of 2020. So I basically threw my fit for that weekend, got really upset. And then I had to put my big girl pants on and say, okay, what's next? What can I do? I couldn't go into teaching for August 2020 because I had planned to live in China.
Yeah.
So there was no, so every option was basically, it came to a halt. It
Sure.
came to a halt. And so literally I just said, all right, let's get creative here. I have this podcast. What can I do with this? And I decided, let me just start selling my own products, services, and offerings. And even before that, the 2.5 years leading up to that pivotal moment, the one stream of income that was coming through to me the strongest was corporate sponsorships. And that was the stream that was consistent, very steady. And now I'm adding on the different streams of my remote classes and PDFs and things like that. But that's the evolution of 360. And it's cool to look back in hindsight and say, oh, wow, like these things morph. There's flexibility. It's not just always one thing, all the time. It definitely has an evolution. So that's my story.
Do you ever go back to your first episodes and like, I don't know if, because you have a different story where like some people just start and then like they listen back to the first episodes and it's so like cringeworthy, but you put a lot of thought into the first episodes because it was for, your DMA. So I was just curious if you listened to any of those and were like, hey, that was actually pretty good.
You would think so, but you would probably have to pay me $1 million to listen back to those episodes. No, thank you. They are still cringeworthy.
Yeah. So your first dollar in podcasting then was through sponsorships. When was it that you're like, hey, maybe I should get a sponsor for this podcast?
Yeah, for sure. And the thing that I will add to this is the reason why podcasting could be a thing was because my husband is an audio engineer who has been helping podcasters about 3 years prior to my dissertation. So I was hearing these podcasters and their stories like in my ear for 3 years before 360 was a thing. And so that's a very special ingredient to all of this because I wouldn't have known to seek out corporate sponsorships if I hadn't heard of these podcasters and their stories. And so I just throw that out there because at month 7, I had 500 downloads for the month. Not huge, okay, decent, but nothing crazy. And I went to my husband who knows the industry because he's an editor for podcasters. And I said, I think it's time for me to reach out to corporations. And he's like, and he is the most supportive husband ever. So that's my disclaimer. He looked at me and he said, you're not big enough. There's no way. And I said, oh, no, I think I've got something here. I'm ready. And he's just like, okay, give it a try. But if you get no's, I don't want you to be disappointed. It's going to take some time. So he was just being practical and realistic. But I started giving it a try. And I realized that actually I was getting some bites. And I was like, heck yeah. And I told him, I said, kind of a little like, I told you so. And he goes, wow, that even surprised me. Good job. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. And so anyways, that was kind of how I decided, oh, I need to start seeking this out because I knew there was value. I knew that I had something to be proud of. I knew that it was making a difference in flutists' lives. I knew that it was something that I was super proud of. And man, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into those first 7 months. And so I thought if I can be compensated for my time and my efforts, all the better.
Yeah. So how long was it from you saying to your husband, I think I need to go, find a sponsor, to the first sponsorship? Was it within a month? Was it 2 months or?
Yeah, good question. It actually was probably a month or 2. It was not too much longer after that initial, hey, I need to check this out. I think I reached out to some flute companies probably November of 2018. And then I actually sealed the deal with my first sponsor January of 2019. So yeah, couple months.
Yeah.
And
what did that deal look like?
Yeah, it was the William S. Haynes Flute Company out in Boston. And I spoke and I worked with 2 wonderful women over there. They are no longer with Haynes, but Katie Hunt and Christina. I'm forgetting her last name right now, but these women just, oh my gosh, mind blowing how articulate and smart and savvy they are with marketing. It just opened up new doors for me that I didn't even know were there. And I'm just so grateful for these women who believed in me and the platform. And so they signed on for January 2019, and I was going to do a series where I went through some competition repertoire guidelines for flutists. We have this massive competition, the NFA Young Artist Competition that happens in February of every year. And so basically it was advice for those flutists submitting recordings for that competition.
Okay.
And they loved the content, and they said, yeah, we want to support this. And they bought a gold sponsorship for 4 episodes, which cost $500.
Wow.
And a month later, when I got that check in the mail, I was like, oh, wow, now it's just time to scale this and to keep doing this. Like, that was nice to be compensated for my time.
So what did a gold sponsorship entail?
Yeah, great question. So I have a sponsorship form that I send out to companies where it's keep it simple, smarty. I kiss it. That's my mantra in life. If you can't kiss it, don't do it. So basically my sponsorship form, reads like a menu: breakfast, lunch, dinner. And in each tier, you've got different things of what's included and what's not included for X amount of episodes, and here's your price.
Sure.
And so for the gold at that time, it was a little mixture of different things like pre-roll, your pre-roll ad before the content airs, some social media blasts, like on a Friday and Saturday, the days leading up to the launch of the episode, hashtags being used in the social media, links and show notes, what other things, logo on my website, some stories where I tag Haynes in the story through Instagram and Facebook. So all of those different things, as long as eyes and ears are heard on their company, they seem to be pretty satisfied.
Yeah. But you made it, the point there was you made it more than just the podcast pre-roll or mid-roll or end-roll ad. It was, here, I have a following on Instagram and that kind of stuff, because people, I mean, obviously your audience is, flutes or flutists. Probably flutes don't have ears, so they're not listening, but, and that's a value to them. So, do you think you would be able to get the same level of sponsorships if you had like a general kind of podcast to all of people who liked music, say, rather than just people who play the flute?
That is a phenomenal question. And no, I don't think I would have been so successful with this realm of corporate sponsorships if it was a general music show. I think me being extremely niche serves me well. If you look at Apple right now, I believe there are 5 to 6 flute podcasts out there. And from there, only 2 of us have a terminal degree. And then Katie Masad, who has a terminal degree, she is the host of the flute show called Flute Unscripted, which is it piggybacks off of a company out in New York called Flute Center of New York, which, by the way, I love those people out there. The owner, Phil Unger, is unbelievable. And Katie is phenomenal. But they have this show to bring in their clients to buy their flutes, music, things like that. So she's hosting it. She's not actually, I believe, she's an employee of Flute Unscripted. So therefore, she's not producing it at the same level as I am, where I'm putting my own money into the show.
Sure.
So then there's a distinction then now between Katie and I. So all of that is to say, my show is very unique and it really is one of a kind.
Right. And I would imagine that the same audience that's listening to her show is also listening to your show, because you only release once a week, correct? Or is it more than that?
Yeah, for the first 3 years, it's been 1 a week, very consistent. I think I took 1 summer off because I was close to burnout. But now I'm upping to about 2 or 3 episodes a week, and that's a new thing for year 4.
Sure. Okay. With that uptick, then, are you going to be able to, like, how does that sponsorship change? Is it still like a month kind of length contracts, or like, tell us where you're at with sponsorships now?
Yeah. So literally, I'm in transition. I am turning a page of a new chapter as we speak. So I don't know how it's necessarily going to pan out, but I will say my goal is to package these now instead of monthly sponsorships, but quarterly sponsorships. So, because if you go knocking on these doors and calling these businesses every month, it gets exhausting going to the well to get water every 30 days. So my goal now is to go to the well and say, all right, you're locked in now for 3 months.
Yeah.
Less work for me, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and so then I can kind of package it and say, well, in the past, I have done $1,000 for the gold tier for only 1 month. If I lock you in for 3 months, technically that would be $3,000, but let me kind of shave some of that off for you, give you a discount, and maybe now let's talk $2,250 or something. I don't know.
Sure.
So literally, to be very honest, I don't know how that's going to look because I'm literally going into a new chapter.
Yeah, you could potentially then do like a 3 month or 6 month, and 6 months get a little bit more. Were you doing like month to month, and then people like could renew each month, or were you getting a new sponsor each month leading up to this point?
Yeah, I was getting a new sponsor every month.
Wow.
Which is good.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. But yeah, so there are some people who have resigned on. So like, for example, Kathy Blocky, she's the founder of Blocky Flutes, and she's an inventor, an author, a flutist, a teacher. She's extraordinary. And she's actually sponsored me 3 separate times.
Okay.
Because she was so pleased, and she and I just basically became BFF. She's a huge mentor and woman in my life, and so for her to sign on multiple times, it was like, oh, that makes sense, because she and I just hit it off.
So if the listener is probably asking at this point, how did you come up with a $500 price point when you had 500 listens, and now you're at, I believe you're right around that 3,500 a month, and you're at $1,000 a month for sponsorship packages? Like, how do you come up with your pricing? Is there any formula or thought that goes into it, or is it just pulling a number and saying, I think I can get this?
Yeah, I can imagine like a magician having a hat in the rabbit and just like, oh, like a nice number. Let's go with that, right? It feels a little that way. Very good question. Actually, yes. So most podcasters listening to this, you probably have Googled this at some point, and you've noticed like, oh, there's CPM or there's value-based. So I am going with a true value-based, and this is something you can't Google. So I'm going to be
ungoogleable.
It's ungoogleable. So I will say this. I won't give away the whole enchilada because it's non-Googleable, and you kind of have to pay to figure that out with me. But I will say that you need to justify your costs. You can't just pull out that number. You have to figure out a formula that makes sense. You come across as fair, and it's good business. You can't just say, hand me $1,000 check, and you don't have 1,000, downloads for the month. You have to show that there's traffic. You have to show there's value. You have to show that the business and the content in your show all align. And when that happens, then you can start, asking for X amount. But I will say, like, going back to the gold tier for $500, when I had 500 downloads for the month, there's proof there. I want everyone to hear this. Like, I wasn't a big show. It was small, and I got a check. So, it's possible for the listeners out there too. So I hope I totally didn't burst your bubble and not giving you away the formula, but I hope that I gave you enough to realize, or for the listeners to realize, that it's not willy-nilly. I'm not just totally pulling
Yeah.
stuff out of the air. I am sitting down and figuring out, what does this cost? What would I want to charge? And figuring out and adding up those numbers. So that way, again, going back, and I don't mean to be a broken record, but justifying those costs and adding it up. So that way, when I go to these companies, I'm not like waving any red flags. They're looking at it and they're like, oh yeah, that's fair. She wants to do business. I can get behind that. There's nothing there that makes me cringe. So hopefully that general answer.
Yeah. So I got a follow-up question, because probably most of the people that are listening are not in the flute industry. And I know you've thrown out some names of companies that have sponsored you in the past, and they seem to be like large and small. Did you find like there's a sweet spot as far as size of company that you were able to target and get better response from?
Oh, great question. Yes. So in context, if you are not a flutist or a musician listening to this, hearing Haynes, Powell, Straubinger, it will mean nothing to you, right? But I will tell you right now, these are huge companies.
Okay.
So again, I am this itty bitty woman and show in this huge space, and I'm working with ginormous corporations. So again, shoot for the stars, because you can start off small and local, like go to an Etsy shop owner or somebody that you know, trust, and like, whose products, services, and offerings align with your content. Yeah, go small if you want to, but you can go big. Don't be totally, I don't know, awestruck and think, oh, a company like that would never want to work with me, because that's not true.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea of the makeup of these different corporations, I have flute makers, nonprofit organizations, flute shops, music apps, and audio companies. So that kind of gives you an idea that there's a good mix here. And the size of it really ranges all the way from a nonprofit organization who might be like small, medium-esque, all the way to massive, huge flute makers out east. And that's a huge hub for flute making.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's important to note too, just because across different niches, you're going to have different sizes of companies that are in that niche. And it's hard to know, like, Joe Schmo down the street, that's a one-man show. Like, you might have a good relationship with him, but he might not also have the money to invest in a risk, say, like, it's not necessarily a risk if you deliver for them, but at the end of the day, they're taking like maybe a different form of advertising that they've ever thought about and be like, okay, I'm going to throw $500, that could go towards you, or it could go towards Facebook ads, or it could go to, Pinterest ads and stuff. So it's good to hear that there is a variety, and it's just a matter of, I would imagine, asking the question enough to enough people.
Yep. You won't know until you ask.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how many like what your, I guess, success rate is from reaching out to a company to getting a sponsor? Is it 1 in 10, 20, 50?
Oh my goodness, I never really thought of it, only because I just keep going, just like, all right, I gotta know, move on. All right, I gotta know, move on. I really don't know, to be honest. I'd have to sit down and think about it. But if I had to guess, I want to say 1 in 20, maybe 1 in 15.
Yeah, that's
yeah. It's not 1 in 100.
Yeah,
it's not anything that huge. I would say 1 out of 15 or 1 out of 20.
Yeah.
So that just shows you, just like MJ, Michael Jordan back in the day.
Yeah.
He'd have to make a lot of shots in order to get a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to happen MJ might be the exception, but you literally like have to shoot and shoot and shoot, and then it slams, and then you just do it again. And the more you do it, though, I will say, the more comfortable you get on the phone, the more you know how to, I'm doing air quotes here, sell your show.
Sure.
It's not a sales it's not a sales pitch, by the way, guys. It's literally when you call these people, you're talking to human beings. So be really authentic and genuine. Don't start getting all salesy, because it's going to feel like an awful 1970s scene with the car salesman or woman and be like, ooh, what do I have to do to get you in this car today? You know?
I think the opening line is, I have information about your car's warranty, and I have a podcast that you should sponsor.
There you go. Oh, shoot. Yeah.
No,
exactly.
that's a good point, that, just have a real conversation and to actually pick up the phone. I think there's a lot that you just said there that brings a lot of value. One, the 1 in 15 or 1 in 20 is an encouraging number, because it's not 1 in 100. I mean, you don't have to have a full-time job just reaching out to these companies, but it also, if you get your first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 no's, like, okay, well, it took Heidi longer than that as well. So, there's that. But we're getting towards the end of our time here. But so I want to spend some time. I know you said in July 2020 is when you decided, well, hey, I'm not going to go to China. I need to start making some of my own courses, products, packages, that kind of stuff. Up to that point, did you have anything like that developed, or was that like, we're starting from scratch?
We are starting from scratch.
So then how long was it or what was your process of making like your first digital or online product, or was it even digital, or did you have something else?
Yeah, great question. Well, the thing that I could start selling right away were basically my services of being a music teacher, a presenter, an adjudicator, a guest artist, a clinician. So those fees came in rather quickly, because that's what I was already doing in the traditional sense. I mean, those are traditional music roles that we already carry, but I was just now advertising it through the podcast.
Sure.
So that was easy. Then the second stream with designing my own classes from scratch, basically I had to, for example, like my podcasting musician class, how to build a podcast and helping creatives do that. It was just sitting down and figuring out the steps, how many weeks it would take, figuring out the logistics. And then, same thing with the second class, like how to obtain corporate sponsorships, same thing. It was figuring out, and like I was telling you yesterday, my first and primary role on this earth is being an educator. So taking difficult, maybe complex, not that podcasting is complex, but taking a difficult concept and breaking it down for students or anyone to learn. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I do best. And so literally, with the corporate sponsorships, it was like, what is working? What's not working? Why am I receiving yeses here? And why am I receiving no's here? And then figuring out that there's a strategy and there's a pattern here. And it's not just, totally guesswork or whatever the word is that I'm looking for, but it's, there's a pattern. And so just sitting it down and just writing it out and saying, okay, this is, when this happens, I'm getting these results, right? And then just reverse engineering it. And then breaking it down and saying, all right, starting from scratch, who do I contact? When do I contact them? How do I do it? What do I need? And then just like spitting it out. And then you put it in a pretty PDF, stick some kitty pictures with it, and you've got a class. So the listeners can't see, but you can see I'm in front of a green screen. And so basically you just get, you practice the spiel a couple of times, you practice the content and delivering it very well. You get in front of a camera, you start recording, you edit, and then you package it where then you can just have it live on your website and people just purchase it. So
how long did it take you to make like your first online product like that was kind of,
sorry, did I go down okay, sorry, I feel like I went down a rabbit hole there and gave you way more than you had asked for. So like that class in that sense, probably a couple months, maybe a good month to just jot it down. Then the next month was to practice a couple run-throughs, record it. The editing process of video takes some time, as most of you guys know, and then putting it up on the website. So from start to finish, it could roughly take somebody about like 1 to 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were really gung-ho about it. If it's going past 6 months, I don't know, because every class is different. So that's my disclaimer. But you can really rip it off like a Band-Aid. I mean, the one thing that really sticks out to me is the inventor of thumb port for the flute. His name is Ho Fan Lee, and you can check out episode 41 if you want to. This man is phenomenal. He's a genius. And in inventing this thumb port, he told me in an interview, I said, how long was that process? Did it take you years? And he's like, Heidi, I woke up one morning, I sketched out the thumb port in 15 minutes, and I, sent it over to the factory. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. But I share that story because sometimes we make it more complicated than it needs to be. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can just be a matter of just ripping off that Band-Aid. Yeah, it's going to sting a little bit, but it's done. And then you get to move on. So I think that's really cool.
Cool. Well, before we say our goodbyes here, I do know that one of your courses is called the Generating Income Through Corporate Sponsorships. It's for podcasters, that may be listening to this and say, hey, I'm at that 500 mark, or I want to see if I can I'm ready for a sponsorship. So I guess who would be a good fit for that class that you're taking? And before we say who would be a good fit, just a quick shout out to Heidi and her work here. She got to show me kind of the behind the scenes of what's all entailed with it. And she's actually going to sit down with you in the course and be a part of it, kind of like a classic, teacher. She's a teacher at heart. So she'll teach you live. She'll help you, you'll submit some work for her that's actually going to be used to, get a sponsorship. She'll go through it, make edits, changes, suggestions for it. So it's a really hands-on course, which I think is really cool and it's unique, rather than just saying like, here's it and forget about you. Yeah. She walks you through the process. But who would be the right person? Because obviously if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to get a corporate sponsor like at your level, with 5 downloads an episode. So what range are you kind of looking at, and what type of podcast would they need to have?
Yeah, great question. So thank you for that shout out. That's very kind of you to mention the hands-on-ness of the show or of the class. So yes, for podcasters out there who know that you are putting out valuable content that's consistent, you are engaging with your audience, you've got semi-good numbers. If you have some sort of niche within your community, I think that's a plus. So this corporate sponsorship class is perfect for those podcasters out there. I would really encourage podcasters who have some kind of backlog of episodes. If you are literally right now at episode 15, 20, that's great. Keep trucking along, keep doing it, but your time is not just yet. I would highly recommend people who want to work with me and who want to start seeking those corporate sponsorships, that you need to have at least minimum, I would say, 400, 500 downloads per month. And it needs to be pretty steady, because these business owners and these marketers are going to be looking at your backlog, and they're going to be looking through Buzzsprout or Libsyn to see the numbers. Mm-hmm. When they ask like how many downloads you have, they're going to check. They're not going to just take your, they're not going to take your word for it. They're going to check. So you need to have, I think, at least 400 to 500 downloads per month. You need to have some very unique aspect of your show. If you are one out of 1,000 basketball podcast shows out there, that might be too general and you might have a hard time landing a sponsorship. If it's consistent, valuable content, and if you can really honestly showcase to the potential sponsor that you're in it for the long haul, you care about your audience, you're there to show up, you see the show continuing onward and it's not going to end anytime soon, I think you are a great fit for somebody who can work with a corporation.
Awesome. Cool. And we'll have links to obviously your podcast, your website, and that class in the show notes here as well. But if somebody wants more Heidi in their life, where can they find you? Where can they follow you on social? And where's the best place to connect?
Oh, you're sweet. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. My handle is at Heidi K. Begay everywhere. Feel free to add me as a friend, follow me. I try to be super accessible and I want to get to know you. I really genuinely want to root you on your different, through your different goals and on your path. And I would love to be in relationship with you. HeidiKBegay.com is my website, and HeidiKBegay@gmail.com is my email. And you can hear a little rhyme here. And
Yeah.
what's better yet, my husband's name is Eric J. Begay. I got Eric J.
That's
Begay and
awesome.
Heidi K. Begay. Yeah. So if I'm ever a mother, I am going to literally be that embarrassing mom, and everyone's going to be something Ray Begay, something May Begay, something Day Begay. I'm going to go all out. It's going to be cheesy.
Awesome. And you spell Heidi K. Begay, HeidiKaybegay. Thanks, Heidi.
Yes. Thank you.